6 months passed since the attack on Mars. Earth's governments had united under the threat of alien invasion. Military leaders from around the world gathered in an underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains to address the new reality. "Luciu, aliens will be back," said General Howard, his weathered face grim under the harsh lights. "And next time, they'll bring more ships." Major Grace Miller nodded in agreement. She had spent the last 5 months studying the recovered alien technology from Mars. "We're dealing with a mercenary group called the Karzak Guild, according to the data we extracted. They've conquered dozens of worlds for something called the hegemony." On the large screen behind her, images of the reptilian aliens appeared alongside translations of their communications. What's most interesting is their classification of Earth as a death world. Apparently, our planet's conditions are considered extremely hazardous by galactic standards. "And that makes us dangerous," added Admiral Patel. "Our soldiers can endure conditions that would kill most alien species." General Howard stood up. "Which is why we're establishing the Deathworld Response Unit, the DRU, a special forces group trained specifically to counter alien threats." He turned to Grace. "Major Miller, you'll lead this unit. Your background in xenobiology and combat tactics makes you uniquely qualified." Grace's first recruit was Captain Eric Daniels, the hero of Mars. He entered her office with a slight limp. Still recovering from his wounds. "Captain Daniels reporting as ordered, ma'am," he said, saluting. Grace returned the salute. "At ease, Captain. How's the leg?" "Doctors say I'll be back to full strength in another month." Eric smiled. "Something about humans healing faster than the aliens expected." "That's exactly why I want you for the DRU," Grace said. "We need soldiers who face these threats and understand what we're up against." Eric nodded. The Karzak were strong and well-armed, but they panicked when their initial strategy failed. They're not used to adaptable opponents. "And they're not coming back," Grace revealed, sliding a tablet across the desk. "Our deep space monitoring detected their ship leaving the solar system at high speed, but we've picked up signals suggesting another mercenary group has been hired." Eric examined the data. "Do we know anything about them?" "They're called the Void Wraiths. According to intercepted communications, they specialize in stealth operations and psychological warfare. And they're considered even deadlier than the Karzak." Across the galaxy, aboard the shadow black vessel, Silent Dagger, Commander Shalvex of the Void Wraiths reviewed the footage from the Mars attack. Her slender fingers traced the holographic display as she replayed the human counterattack for the 5th time. "Fascinating," she murmured. Unlike the bulky Karzak, the Void Wraiths were tall, thin beings with gray skin and large, completely black eyes. They moved with eerie grace in the low gravity of their ship. Her second-in-command, Trist, hovered nearby. "The hegemony has doubled the payment for subjugating the humans. They're desperate to control the Sol system." Shalvex nodded. "The Karzak are brutes. They failed because they underestimated these creatures." She zoomed in on footage of a wounded human Marine continuing to fight despite a serious injury. "We won't make the same mistake." For 3 months, the Void Wraiths observed Earth and its colonies, planting stealth probes throughout the solar system. They watched human military exercises, studied their tactics, and analyzed their biology. What they saw disturbed them. Humans, trained in environments that would kill most galactic species. They deliberately exposed themselves to pain and exhaustion to build endurance. They simulated every possible combat scenario, constantly adapting their strategies. "Commander," Trist reported one day, "our analysis is complete. These humans have several concerning traits. They require regular sleep, but can go without it for days when necessary. They can continue fighting with injuries that would incapacitate our warriors. And most troublingly, they seem to become more aggressive when cornered." Shalvex made her decision. "We will test their defenses with a small force. Attack their outpost on the icy moon they call Europa. Let's see how they respond to a different approach than the Karzak used." On Europa, 50 scientists and engineers maintained a research station beneath the moon's icy surface. They were studying the vast ocean hidden below, searching for alien life. They never expected to find it coming from above. The attack began without warning. Stealth ships landed silently on Europa's surface. Void Wraith infiltrators cut through the ice and entered the station through maintenance shafts. Unlike the Karzak's frontal assault, this was a precision strike. Sergeant Kyle Harrison was checking equipment in the lower levels when the emergency lights activated. The comms crackled with static before the station director's panicked voice came through. Unknown hostiles have breached levels 3 and 4. They're using some kind of paralytic gas. Security team not responding. Kyle grabbed his sidearm. Standard issue for security personnel even on research stations after the Mars attack. He tried to access the security feeds, but they were already disabled. "This is Sergeant Harrison," he responded. "All personnel, seal yourselves in the emergency shelters. I'm contacting Earth." He managed to send a brief distress signal before the comms went dead. Within minutes, strange figures in sleek black armor began moving through the lower levels. They moved almost silently, using advanced technology to disable systems as they went. On Earth, the DRU received Europa's distress call. Major Miller immediately activated the response team. "This is not a drill," she announced to the assembled soldiers. "Europa Station is under attack by suspected Void Wraith forces. Dropships launch in 15 minutes. Captain Daniels checked. His new combat suit, a significant upgrade from what they'd had on Mars. It incorporated reverse-engineered alien technology with human durability. "Remember your training," he told his squad. "These aren't the Karzak. They'll use stealth and psychological tactics." The journey to Europa took hours, even with the new faster ships. When they arrived, the situation was already dire. The Void Wraiths had taken control of the upper levels and were systematically working their way down, capturing humans for study. What they hadn't counted on was Sergeant Harrison. Using his knowledge of the station's maintenance tunnels, he had been moving survivors to a secure area and setting traps for the aliens. When the station's airlock was sabotaged to prevent rescuers from entering, Harrison did something that shocked even his fellow humans. He put on an emergency vacuum suit with only 5 minutes of air, went outside onto Europa's airless surface, and manually overrode the sabotaged airlock, exposing himself to near vacuum conditions for almost a minute when his suit was damaged. The DRU forces arrived to find Harrison barely conscious but alive, having saved 23 researchers by his actions. Captain Daniels led the counter-assault, using tactics specifically developed for the Void Wraith's style of combat. The aliens were unprepared for how quickly the humans adapted to their methods. When the Wraiths used sound-based weapons designed to disorient, the humans switched to visual-only communications. When they deployed their paralytic gas, the humans used respirators designed after studying the Mars attack. After 3 hours of fighting, the remaining Void Wraiths retreated to their ships and fled the Jupiter system. Back on the Silent Dagger, Shalvex reviewed the battle footage with growing concern. "Impossible," she whispered, as she watched the recording of Harrison's space walk. "He should have died instantly in those conditions." Trist looked equally disturbed. "The hegemony won't be pleased." Shalvex turned to her second-in-command, her black eyes reflecting the starlight. "For the first time in the history of the Void Wraiths, we will decline a contract." She closed the holographic display. "These humans, they're not just Deathworlders. They're something else entirely." As the Silent Dagger slipped away from the solar system, Major Miller debriefed her team on Earth. Sergeant Harrison had been awarded a medal for his bravery and was recovering in medical. "2 mercenary groups have now failed to subjugate Earth," she said. "But the hegemony seems determined. Our intelligence suggests they're reaching out to an even more dangerous group now." Captain Daniels studied the intel report. "The Crimson. Path never heard of them." "That's because they don't leave survivors to tell stories," Grace replied grimly. "They've conquered 3 star systems through overwhelming force, and unlike the others, they don't take no for an answer." The massive ship Crimson Talon drifted silently through space, its dark hull reflecting the distant starlight. Inside the command center, Zalkoth stood with his 4 arms crossed over his armored chest. His reptilian eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic display of a blue-green planet. "So this is the new target," he said, his voice deep and gravelly. "Doesn't look like much." The science officer, a thin alien with pale blue skin, nervously adjusted her breathing apparatus. The planet is designated Terra, Commander. Classification: Deathworld Class 12. A murmur rippled through the command center. Zalkoth raised a scaly eyebrow. Class 12? The highest we've conquered was a Class 10, and we lost 200 warriors. The hegemony is offering triple our usual rate, said Merkal, his second-in-command. They're desperate to control this system. Zalkoth grunted and zoomed in on the planet. What makes this rock so deadly? It looks habitable. That's just it, sir, the science officer said. It's not the planet itself that earned the classification, it's the dominant species. She pulled up an image of a human. They call themselves humans. They evolved in extreme conditions, high gravity, wild temperature swings, deadly predators, and constant warfare. One of the mercenaries laughed. That skinny thing? No armor, no claws, not even a decent set of teeth. Don't be fooled by appearances, the science officer warned. They're endurance predators. They can heal from wounds that would kill most species. They can survive in almost any environment. And they're extraordinarily aggressive. Zalkoth waved a dismissive hand. The Karzak Mercenary Guild has conquered 53 systems in 700 years. We won't be stopped by soft-skinned primates. He turned to his war council. Send a scouting team to their outpost on the 4th planet. Let's see what we're dealing with. 3 days later, 5 Karzak ships approached the human Mars colony. The colony was small, a research base with minimal defenses, the perfect target for a test run. Weapons hot. Commence attack, ordered squad leader Dren. The ships opened fire on the colony's outer dome. The thin barrier shattered, and emergency bulkheads slammed shut to contain the breach. Landing party, move in, Dren commanded. 20 elite Karzak warriors, each wearing powered armor that enhanced their already formidable strength, descended to the surface. They moved with practiced precision, cutting through the colony's outer doors with plasma torches. Inside the Mars colony, alarms blared as emergency lights flashed. Lieutenant Eric Daniels of the United Earth Defense Force raced down a corridor, pulling on his combat suit. Status report, he yelled into his comm unit. 5 unknown vessels attacked the North Dome, replied a panicked voice. They've breached the main lab section. We have civilians trapped in there. Eric grimaced. His unit consisted of just 12 Marines, a standard security detail for a research outpost. They weren't equipped for a full-scale alien invasion. Personnel, gear up, he ordered. Civilians retreat to the emergency bunkers. This is not a drill. The Karzak warriors moved through the colony, their thermal scanners tracking heat signatures. They were surprised by how quickly the humans had responded to the attack. Most species would still be in panic mode. Targets ahead, growled a Karzak warrior. 20 meters, moving in formation. Squad leader Dren smiled behind his helmet. Remember, the hegemony wants prisoners for study. Try not to kill them all. The first exchange of fire went exactly as the Karzak expected. Their advanced weapons cut through the humans' primitive armor. 3 Marines fell in seconds. Fall back to position Beta, Eric shouted, firing his rifle to cover the retreat. A plasma bolt sizzled past his ear, close enough that he could smell his own hair burning. He ducked behind a reinforced door as his team sealed it. We need heavier weapons, he said, checking his team. 3 dead, 2 wounded. Not good odds. Johnson, Harper, get to the armory. Grab the prototype suits. The 2 Marines nodded and raced off. Outside, Dren was pleased with the initial skirmish. Pathetic resistance, he reported to the Crimson Talon. These creatures are no threat. We'll have the outpost secured within the hour. Zalkoth's voice came through the comm. Excellent. The hegemony will be pleased. What the mercenaries didn't know was that Eric had triggered an emergency beacon the moment the attack began, and Earth had responded immediately. High above Mars, a spatial distortion appeared as a United Earth Defense Force destroyer exited from jump space. The captain, a veteran of the Belt Wars, assessed the situation quickly. Alien hostiles attacking. Mars Research Base Alpha. Deploy rapid response team, she ordered, and someone get me intel on those ships. Within minutes, 3 dropships launched from the destroyer, each carrying 15 soldiers in next-generation combat armor. On the surface, the Karzak were methodically working their way through the colony when their sensors detected new signatures entering the atmosphere. "Squad leader, we have incoming craft," reported a warrior. Dren checked his display. "Just reinforcements. Prepare to engage." The human dropships landed 2 kilometers from the colony, and the soldiers deployed with practiced efficiency. "Captain," Sam Rogers addressed his troops. "Intel says we've got unknown hostiles attacking civilian researchers. No attempts at communication, so we're treating this as a straight hostile action. Standard containment protocol." The troops moved out, their armor allowing them to cover ground with incredible speed despite Mars's lower gravity. Inside the colony, Eric and his remaining Marines had regrouped with the prototype weapons, heavy Gauss rifles designed to punch through ship hulls. They'd managed to hold a defensive line, but they were running out of options. That's when his comm unit crackled. "Lieutenant Daniels, this is Captain Rogers. Cavalry has arrived. Hold position." Eric's face broke into a relieved smile. "Copy that, Captain. We'll keep them busy." The Karzak warriors were getting frustrated. These humans were fighting with unexpected ferocity. Even the wounded ones refused to stay down. "Push forward," Dren ordered. "They're just stalling." His words cut off as the wall behind them exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through the breach, firing with precision. The Karzak were caught in a crossfire between Eric's team and the newcomers. "What the?" Dren started before a Gauss round punched through his shoulder armor. He staggered back, shocked by the primitive projectile's power. "Retreat. Back to the ships," he ordered, suddenly aware that they'd severely underestimated these creatures. The Karzak attempted to withdraw, but the humans pressed their advantage relentlessly. Captain Rogers led a flanking maneuver that cut off their escape route. In orbit, Zalkoth received desperate communications from his ground team. "We're under heavy attack. They just keep coming. Request immediate extraction." Zalkoth couldn't believe what he was hearing. His elite warriors were being routed by what should have been an easy target. And now, a human warship was moving to by. "Engage his vessels. All ships prepare to withdraw," he ordered reluctantly. "Launch covering fire to extract our ground forces." Only 7 of the 20 Karzak warriors made it back to their ships. As they fled the Mars airspace, Dren gave his report directly to Zalkoth. "Commander, these humans, they're not like other species we've faced," he said, his voice shaking. "They don't break, they adapt instantly, and they seem to almost enjoy the combat." Back on the Crimson Talon, Zalkoth stared at the human warship that had chased them out of the system. For the first time in his long career, he felt a twinge of doubt. "Send all data to our analysts," he ordered. "I want to know everything about these humans before we make another move." The science officer worked quickly, then looked up with wide eyes. "Sir, our preliminary analysis confirms it. If anything, Terra was underclassified. These humans might be the galaxy's first Class 13 Deathworld species." Zalkoth looked back at the view screen showing the distant blue planet. The Karzak Mercenary Guild had never failed a contract in 700 years, but as he considered what he'd just witnessed, he wondered if they were about to break that record. News of the Void Wraith's failure spread quickly through the galactic underworld. In the Grand Hall of the Hegemony's central world, Supreme Commander Vexilor slammed his fist on the ornate table. 2 of the galaxy's most feared mercenary groups, defeated by primitives. His scales flushed purple with rage as he addressed the gathering of Hegemony officials. "The Sol system must be brought under control. Its position is too strategically valuable." An advisor stepped forward nervously. "Supreme Commander, perhaps we should reconsider. These humans seem unusually resilient." Vexilor's eyes narrowed. "The Hegemony has never failed to claim a system we desire. We will not start now." He turned to his chief strategist. "Triple the payment. Offer it to the Crimson Path." A collective gasp went through the chamber. The Crimson Path was feared even among the Hegemony's own ranks. They were brutal, effective, and utterly without mercy. Days later, aboard the massive warship Inevitable Doom, Draz Kern, leader of the Crimson Path, reviewed the Hegemony's offer. His scarred face twisted into what passed for a smile among his species. "Triple the standard rate? These humans must be troublesome indeed. He looked to his commanders, a collection of the galaxy's most vicious warriors from a dozen different species. The Karzak Guild and Void Wraiths have grown soft. That's why they failed. His second in command, a hulking four-armed being covered in bone spikes, stepped forward. We have intercepted communications from both groups. They warn against engaging. The humans directly. They claim these creatures possess unusual endurance and adaptability. Drazkern laughed, a harsh sound like metal grinding. Cowards, all of them. Ready the fleet. We will show the galaxy how the Crimson Path deals with troublesome species. On Mars, reconstruction of the research colony was nearly complete. New defenses had been installed, and a permanent DRU garrison now protected the settlement. Captain Eric Daniels supervised a training exercise when the alarm sounded. Unidentified ships entering the system. Came the frantic call from Earth's Defense Command. Hundreds of them approaching from multiple vectors. Eric's blood ran cold. All personnel to battle stations. This isn't a drill. Major Grace Miller was on Earth when the attack began. She watched in horror as the tactical display showed the massive alien fleet appearing throughout the solar system. It's a coordinated strike, Admiral Patel said grimly. They're hitting Mars, Europa, the Moon colony, and our orbital platform simultaneously. Grace activated the emergency channel. All DRU units deploy immediately. These must be the Crimson Path forces we were warned about. Unlike the previous attacks, this one was overwhelming in its scale and ferocity. On Mars, Eric Daniels and his troops found themselves facing waves of heavily armed mercenaries. These warriors didn't retreat when their initial attacks failed. Instead, they pressed forward, accepting casualties with cold determination. They're different from the others, Eric shouted over the comm as he fired his weapon at an advancing alien. They don't care about losses. The battle for Mars turned desperate. The human forces fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered. Eric led a group of civilians toward an underground bunker when the building above them collapsed. He used his own body to shield a young girl, taking the full weight of a falling beam on his back. On Europa, Sergeant Kyle Harrison's unit was surrounded in the rebuilt research station. The Crimson Path had learned from the Void Wraith's failure and came prepared for human tactics. They're cutting through our defenses like they're not even there, reported a soldier, her face streaked with blood and soot. Harrison grimly checked his ammunition. We hold this position as long as we can. Reinforcements are on the way. But everyone knew help might not arrive in time. On the Moon colony, the situation was equally dire. Lieutenant Olivia Franklin, a brilliant tactician recently assigned to the DRU, found herself coordinating the desperate defense. As the alien forces pushed deeper into the colony, she noticed something odd about their attack patterns. During a brief lull in the fighting, she analyzed the tactical data. There was a pattern to the mercenaries' movements, a predictability she hadn't expected from such an experienced fighting force. They're using standard hegemony combat formations, she realized. That's why they can coordinate so many different species so effectively. They all follow the same playbook. Franklin had spent months studying alien biology and combat tactics. Now she saw a potential weakness. The formations were designed for the average galactic species, beings that evolved on worlds much more hospitable than Earth. She contacted Major Miller on the emergency channel. Major, I've identified a potential weakness in their strategy. Their formations are optimized for normal gravity environments and species with standard metabolic rates. Grace, who was aboard a transport heading to Mars with reinforcements, quickly grasped the implication. They're not accounting for human endurance and our adaptation to higher gravity. Exactly, Franklin continued. If we can lure their forces into extended engagements in variable gravity environments, they'll tire before we do. It was a desperate plan, but they had few options. Grace authorized the strategy, and the word went out to all human forces. Extend. The battles make the mercenaries work in shifting gravity environments, exhaust them. On Mars, despite his serious injuries, Eric Daniels managed to get the civilians to safety before collapsing. Medics rushed him to a field hospital while his troops implemented Franklin's strategy, luring the mercenaries into the lower gravity regions of Mars where humans had trained for months. but the aliens would struggle to adapt quickly. On Europa, Harrison's team used the moon's lesser gravity to perform maneuvers that confused and frustrated the mercenaries. They jumped higher, moved differently, and used the environment in ways the aliens hadn't anticipated. But the Crimson Path had numbers on their side. For every small victory the humans achieved, the mercenaries pushed forward through sheer force. The human casualties mounted, and it became clear that a new approach was needed. Major Miller arrived at Mars orbit to find the colony under heavy assault. The defensive platforms were destroyed, and Crimson Path ships controlled most of the airspace. "We can't win this through conventional means," she told her command staff. "Lieutenant Franklin's insight gives us an edge, but not enough." She studied the tactical display, looking for any advantage. Then she noticed something. The mercenary fleet had a clear command structure. All orders emanated from a single massive vessel in high orbit. "There," she pointed. "That's Draz Kern's command ship. If we can capture or eliminate their leader, we might force them to retreat." It was a high-risk operation, but they were running out of options. Grace selected a small team of DRU soldiers, including Lieutenant Franklin, whose knowledge of alien tactics would be crucial. "This is a volunteer mission only," Grace told them. "The odds of success are low, and the odds of survival even lower." Every soldier stepped forward, while the main human forces created a diversion, a supposed weakness in Earth's orbital defenses. Grace's team used a stealth ship to approach the inevitable doom. They boarded using a maintenance airlock, then fought their way through corridors filled with toxic atmospheric mixtures that the aliens thrived in, but which would kill most species. The human team wore sealed suits, but several SEALs were damaged in the fighting. 2 soldiers collapsed as alien atmosphere seeped into their suits, but the humans pressed on, their extraordinary endurance allowing them to function where other species would have been paralyzed. Lieutenant Franklin led the final assault on the bridge, using her knowledge of Crimson Path tactics to predict their defensive positions. After a brutal firefight, the humans secured the bridge and found themselves face to face with Draz Kern himself. The mercenary leader stared at the humans in disbelief. "Impossible," he growled. "No species could survive that journey through the ship's atmosphere." "We're not just any species," Franklin replied, her weapon trained on him. "We're humans. Deathworlders." With their leader captured, the Crimson Path, ships began to withdraw from human space. The battle had been won, but at a terrible cost. Thousands of humans had died defending their colonies. Captain Daniels lay in critical condition. The Mars colony was heavily damaged. But across the galaxy, word spread quickly. The Crimson Path, who had conquered 3 star systems and never known defeat in 300 years of operation, had failed against the humans of Terra. And in the secure holding cell where Draz Kern awaited interrogation, the mercenary leader looked at his human guards with new understanding. "You really are something new," he said quietly. "The galaxy has no idea what's coming." News spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The Crimson Path had been defeated. Their leader, Draz Kern, was a prisoner of the humans. 3 of the most feared mercenary organizations in known space had failed to conquer the Sol system. The impossible had happened. In a hidden space station at the edge of hegemony territory, representatives from 12 mercenary guilds gathered in secret. The room was filled with the galaxy's most dangerous beings, leaders who commanded armies, capable of toppling governments. "This situation is unprecedented," said Kazak of the Blood Reavers, his tentacles waving in agitation. 3 guilds, 3 failures. Grelthar of the Nova Hounds growled in agreement. "The hegemony grows desperate. They have approached each of us with offers of payment 5 times the standard rate." A holographic projection appeared in the center of the table, showing footage from the battles on Mars, Europa, and Earth orbit. The assembled mercenaries watched human soldiers continuing to fight despite injuries, operating in hostile environments, and adapting to alien tactics with alarming speed. "These humans," whispered Makra of the Shadow Collective, "they're unlike any species we've encountered." After hours of debate, the mercenary leaders reached a unanimous decision. They would form the Coalition of Fear, a temporary alliance of all 12 guilds with unlimited resources dedicated to a single purpose: subjugating Terra and its colonies. Never before had these rivals agreed to work together. But never before had they faced a threat like humanity. On Earth, Major Grace Miller stood at Captain Eric Daniels' hospital bed. After multiple surgeries, he was finally awake, though still weak. "Did we win?" Eric asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Grace smiled. "We did. The Crimson Path retreated after we captured Drazkern." Eric tried to sit up, but winced in pain. "What did we learn from him?" "Enough to be worried," Grace replied, her smile fading. "The hegemony won't give up. They're too invested in claiming our system." She hesitated. "And our interrogation techniques don't work well on his species. Their biology is too different." What Grace didn't tell Eric was that Earth's intelligence services had received a disturbing message from an unexpected source. Shalvex of the Void Wraiths had made contact offering information. In a secure facility beneath the Pentagon, Grace met with the holographic projection of Shalvex. The tall gray alien regarded her with those unsettling black eyes. "Major Miller," Shalvex began, "I come not as an enemy, but as one who respects worthy adversaries." Grace remained cautious. "Why would you help us?" "Because the alternative would be wasteful," the alien replied. "The hegemony has formed the Coalition of Fear, 12 mercenary guilds united against you. They will attack Earth directly within 3 months with a force large enough to glass your planet." Shalvex paused. "Such an outcome would be regrettable." "Why? Should I believe you?" Grace asked. The alien commander's expression remained unreadable. "Because even enemies can recognize exceptional species when they encounter them. Your humans possess qualities rarely seen in the galaxy. To exterminate you would be to lose something unique." After the communication ended, Grace immediately reported to Earth's Defense Council. Plans were made, resources mobilized. Humanity had 3 months to prepare for the largest attack in their history. Dr. Alan Wright, a brilliant scientist working with the DRU, had been studying the alien technology recovered from previous battles. He approached Grace with an excited expression. "Major, I've done it," he said, leading her to his lab. Inside stood a mannequin wearing what looked like a sleek armored suit. "This is the XM-1 combat exoskeleton. It incorporates reverse-engineered alien tech with our own designs." He activated the suit and it hummed to life. "It amplifies human strength by a factor of 5, protects against most alien weapons, and most importantly," he pointed to a small device on the chest plate, "this atmospheric converter allows our soldiers to breathe in environments that would normally be toxic." Grace nodded approvingly. "How many can you make in 3 months?" "With the resources I've been given, at least 500. Throughout the solar system, humanity prepared. Lunar defense batteries were upgraded. Mars and Europa colonies were evacuated, with only military personnel remaining. Earth's orbit bristled with newly constructed weapon platforms. Lieutenant Olivia Franklin, now recovered from the mission to capture Drazkern, trained DRU soldiers in alien combat tactics. Sergeant Kyle Harrison instructed troops in survival, techniques for extreme environments. And Captain Eric Daniels, against medical advice, returned to duty to help coordinate the planet's defenses. Grace gathered them all for a final briefing a week before the expected attack. "This will be different from previous encounters," she told them. "We're facing 12 different mercenary groups, each with their own tactics and technologies. But they also have weaknesses. Most notably, they're not used to working together." Eric, still moving gingerly from his injuries, added, "Our strategy is to exploit that lack of coordination. We'll focus on disrupting their command structures." Olivia pointed to the tactical display. "And we'll use what we've learned about their biological limitations. Most of these species evolved on worlds with limited environmental challenges. They can't match our endurance or adaptability." The Coalition fleet arrived exactly when Shalvex had predicted. Over 2,000 ships appeared in the outer solar system, the largest hostile force humanity had ever faced. They bypassed the outer colonies heading straight for Earth. Admiral Patel addressed the combined Earth Defense Forces from the bridge of the flagship Defiance. "This is the moment humanity has trained for," he said, his voice steady despite the overwhelming odds. "We are outnumbered, but not outmatched. Remember your training. Remember what you're fighting for." The battle began in Earth orbit. The Coalition. Forces expected a conventional defense, with Earth's military meeting them head-on. Instead, they found a complex web of traps, ambushes, and guerrilla tactics. Human ships would strike quickly, then retreat into carefully prepared defensive positions. On the Coalition command ship, the 12 guild leaders struggled to coordinate their forces. Each had their own ideas about strategy, and their troops were not accustomed to working together. "The humans are not fighting properly," complained Grelthar. "They hit and run instead of engaging directly. They're drawing us into their defensive grid," observed Makra. "Each retreat pulls our forces deeper into their trap." After the initial space battle, the Coalition launched boarding parties against Earth's orbital platforms. This was where Dr. Wright's new exoskeletons proved their worth. Human soldiers in the powered armor met the alien boarders in close combat, their enhanced strength and environmental protection negating the aliens' natural advantages. Lieutenant Franklin led a counterboarding action against one of the Coalition's troop carriers. Her team, wearing the new exoskeletons, cut through the ship's hull and stormed inside. The aliens were shocked to see humans moving freely through areas filled with gases that should have been lethal. "Push forward," Franklin ordered as her team secured the engine room. "We need to capture this vessel intact." Aboard the Defiance, Admiral Patel watched as Franklin's team took control of the alien ship. "Major Miller, Lieutenant Franklin has secured one of their troop carriers. Recommend we implement Phase 2. Grace, coordinating ground defenses from the Pentagon, gave the order. "Proceed with Phase 2, and tell Franklin she's done exemplary work." Phase 2 was a daring plan. With the captured Coalition ship, Franklin's team would infiltrate deeper into the enemy fleet, disable key vessels, and create confusion in their ranks. On Earth's surface, Captain Daniels helped coordinate the ground defenses as the first enemy dropships broke through to the atmosphere. Despite his injuries, he insisted on leading from the front lines. "Remember," he told his troops as they prepared to engage the first wave of mercenaries, "they expect us to break, to surrender when faced with overwhelming force. That's what every other species has done." He checked his exoskeleton systems one last time. "But we're humans. We don't break. We adapt. We endure. And today, we win." As the dropships landed and alien mercenaries poured out, humanity stood ready to defend their homeworld. The greatest battle in Earth's history had begun, and despite the overwhelming odds, there was a quiet confidence among the defenders. They had been underestimated before. They would not be defeated now. For 3 days, the battle for Earth raged across land, sea, and space. The Coalition forces fought with everything they had, but at every turn they found humans who refused to surrender, who kept fighting long after most species would have collapsed. Lieutenant Olivia Franklin's mission deep behind enemy lines had succeeded beyond expectations. Her team had captured not one, but 3 Coalition vessels, using them to create chaos in the mercenary fleet. Wearing their advanced exoskeletons, the human soldiers moved through toxic alien atmospheres, turning the ship's environmental systems against their owners. On Earth's surface, the fighting was brutal. Captain Eric Daniels led the defense of New Denver, one of the primary landing zones for Coalition forces. Despite his still healing injuries, he fought alongside his troops, the powered exoskeleton compensating for his weakened body. "They're pulling back from Sector 7, shouted a soldier over the comm system. Eric watched through smoke-filled air as alien troops retreated from their position. "Hold the line, they might be regrouping." But something was different. The Coalition forces weren't regrouping, they were genuinely withdrawing. All across the battlefield, the mercenaries were falling back to their ships. In orbit, Admiral Patel noticed the same pattern. "Major Miller, are you seeing this? Enemy forces are disengaging across all fronts." Grace, coordinating from the Pentagon Command Center, studied the tactical displays in disbelief. Confirm that, they're retreating. She turned to her communications officer. Any demands, any communication at all? Nothing, ma'am. They're just leaving. Above the Earth, the massive coalition fleet began to disperse. Ships jumped away in groups, heading out of the solar system at maximum speed. Within hours, the threat that had seemed unstoppable was gone. Humanity had won, but no one understood why the enemy had suddenly retreated. The answer came 3 days later, when Earth's intelligence services intercepted a recording of an emergency meeting aboard the Coalition command ship, just before the retreat order was given. Grace Miller watched the footage with her senior staff. On the screen, the 12 mercenary leaders argued bitterly. "We cannot sustain these losses," shouted Kazak, one of his tentacles now missing. "These humans aren't fighting like a normal species. They should have surrendered by now," agreed Grelthar, nursing a wound on his scaled arm. "We've deployed enough firepower to subjugate 3 normal worlds." Makra, the most calculating of the mercenary leaders, displayed footage from the ground battles. "Look at this," he said quietly. The images showed human soldiers continuing to fight despite injuries that would incapacitate most species, operating in environmental conditions considered unsurvivable, and displaying tactical adaptability that seemed almost precognitive. "Move that we invoke Article 7 of our agreement," Makra continued. "Immediate withdrawal with full cancellation of the contract." One by one, the mercenary leaders voted. The decision was unanimous. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Coalition of Fear would abandon a contract regardless of the penalty. When the recording ended, the room was silent. Then Dr. Wright spoke up. "They were afraid. The deadliest mercenaries in the galaxy were afraid of us." 6 months passed. Earth and its colonies slowly rebuilt. The injured recovered, the dead were mourned, and humanity prepared for whatever might come next. Then, unexpectedly, a diplomatic vessel from the hegemony entered the solar system under a flag of truce. Supreme Commander Vexler himself came to negotiate with Earth's leaders. In a conference room at the United Nations headquarters, Vexler faced the human delegation led by Major Grace Miller, now promoted to colonel. The hegemony formally recognizes the sovereignty of Terra and all its colonies, Vexler stated, his voice flat. "We propose a non-aggression pact and open diplomatic relations." Grace studied the alien carefully. "Why the change of heart, Supreme Commander?" Vexler's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of discomfort in his species. "The hegemony has existed for 10,000 years because we know when to fight and when to adapt. Your species has been reclassified in our databases." "Reclassified?" asked Admiral Patel. "Terra is now listed as the only known Class 13 Deathworld in charted space," Vexler explained. "And humans are the first species to receive a special designation in our military protocols." Grace leaned forward. "What designation is that?" "Avoid direct engagement," Vexler replied simply. The peace treaty was signed the next day. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through conquest, but by simply being too costly to conquer. Colonel Miller was given a new assignment, establishing humanity's first interstellar defense force. Captain Eric Daniels, fully recovered from his injuries, became her second in command. Lieutenant Franklin was promoted to captain and placed in charge of special operations, and Sergeant Harrison became the lead instructor for the expanded DRU training program. 6 months after the peace treaty, a notorious pirate fleet changed course after detecting a human vessel in a distant system. When questioned by his crew, the pirate captain simply said, "We don't engage Deathworlders, not even for triple rates." Major Eric Daniels led the first human peacekeeping mission to a disputed star system where 3 alien species had been fighting for decades. When his ship arrived, all parties immediately requested negotiations rather than face human peacekeepers. At the galaxy's largest insurance provider for mercenary operations, a new clause was added to all policies. Engagement with human forces would increase premiums by 5,000%, effectively making such contracts unprofitable. Back on Earth, Dr. Wright continued improving his exoskeleton design, working closely with alien scientists who had been invited to exchange knowledge. During a demonstration for visiting diplomats, one of the aliens asked him a question. "Your species evolved on such a harsh world. Does that not make you naturally aggressive? Are you not dangerous to the rest of us?" Wright smiled. "Humans can be dangerous, yes. But we're only truly dangerous when threatened. What makes us different isn't just our physical abilities. It's our capacity for both great violence and great compassion." He gestured to a group of DRU soldiers helping alien visitors adjust their environmental suits. "We may be Deathworlders, but we'd rather make friends than enemies. We just want everyone to understand that if friendship isn't an option, we're more than capable of defending ourselves." At the newly established Galactic Academy on Luna, alien military students watched footage of human DRU training exercises. Their instructor, a veteran of the Coalition War, explained the most important lesson in modern combat tactics. "This is why the galaxy's deadliest mercs refuse to engage Deathworld units," he said as the screen showed humans performing feats of endurance that amazed the alien cadets, not because they couldn't win eventually, with enough resources and enough casualties, but because some victories cost too much. In her office at DRU headquarters, Colonel Grace Miller reviewed reports from human ships now exploring deeper into the galaxy. Each report confirmed what they had learned during the war. Humanity was unique, respected, and yes, feared. A message from Captain Franklin caught her attention. While on a diplomatic mission, Franklin had encountered Shalvex of the Void Wraiths. The alien commander had offered an unusual proposal, not an alliance but a non-aggression pact between her guild and humanity. "She said something interesting," Franklin wrote. "She said that in all her centuries of warfare, humans were the first species she ever warned rather than hunted. When I asked why, she told me, because the galaxy is more interesting with you in it." Grace smiled as she approved the non-aggression pact. Humanity had found its place among the stars not by conquering, but by being simply too stubborn, too adaptable, and too enduring to be conquered. On Mars, now a thriving colony once again, a monument had been erected to commemorate the first battle against alien invaders. The inscription read simply, "They came to conquer Deathworlders. They learned why that was a mistake." The galaxy's deadliest mercenaries had refused to engage Deathworld units, and in doing so, they had given humanity the greatest gift possible: peace, through strength and respect through resilience.